She won the crown, married the money, and from the outside, her life looked like everything a young woman could ever dream of, from private islands to marble floors, mansions with armed guards and ocean views. But behind those gates was an entirely different story. Today, we step past those gates into the homes of 6 Filipino beauty queens who lived inside them, smiled for the cameras, and quietly paid a painful price the world never got to see. Number 1 will leave you speechless. Number 6. Ruffa Gutierrez. This is a woman who left everything she had ever built in the Philippines to follow a Turkish billionaire to Istanbul and ended up trapped in a home she could not leave. Meet Charmaine Ruffa Gutierrez, born on June 24, 1974 in Manila, the daughter of actor Eddie Gutierrez and talent manager Annabel Rama. But none of that prepared her for what came next. She married in 2003 in a lavish ceremony attended by politicians and dignitaries before moving to Istanbul shortly after. Her new home had everything money could build: gold detailing on every piece of furniture, crystal chandeliers, carved wood, heavy drapery, polished stone floors, formal salons, and armed guards at the gate. Yet behind every single one of those gates, something had gone wrong. Earlier on, she grew up deep in the world of Philippine show business from the time she could walk, so it was only a matter of time before she considered joining a pageant. By the time she turned 19, she had won Binibining Pilipinas World 1993 and flown to Sun City, South Africa, where she finished second runner-up at Miss World. The future was bright and bigger opportunities came pouring in. But then came the turning point no one saw coming. Yilmaz Bektas had just arrived in Manila, and he was the founder and chairman of the Intel Group of companies, headquartered in Istanbul. This wasn't just a company, but a conglomerate of petroleum, construction, aviation, banking, and jewelry companies spanning multiple countries. After they got married, Ruffa packed her career, her contracts, and her life in the Philippines and moved to Istanbul as Mrs. Bektas. And though it was clear something had gone wrong since the end of the honeymoon, she tried her best to hide it for years, telling the public instead that it was just cultural differences and smiled through every television interview. She had 2 daughters with him, Lauren and Venice. And just so she could remain with them, it would take 4 more years before she told the world what happened. That shocking moment came in September 2007 when Ruffa admitted on national television that the real reason she had stayed silent was because she was in a foreign country where her husband was the most powerful man she knew. So leaving was not as simple as packing a bag. He threatened her safety as well as the well-being of her family. After much backlash, Yilmaz was forced to give his own interview on the situation, where he admitted to the violence allegations by simply stating he wasn't proud of it. For this reason, they separated in 2012, and Ruffa was finally able to leave that mansion with sole custody of both daughters. As recently as 2024, she admitted to still being afraid long after the ordeal. But fear was not the only thing these golden cages were built from. As we'll see, others were built from money, land, and a powerful name that belonged to someone else. Number 5. Miriam Quiambao. This mansion once belonged to the woman who was 1 point away from being Miss Universe, but found love and quickly gave up everything to be with someone who never wanted her. Her married life in Hong Kong was set inside a polished luxury mansion with marble floors, beige leather furniture, mirrored dining spaces, and a restrained European aesthetic. The atmosphere felt elegant, but lacked all intimacy. Meet Miriam Quiambao. Born in Quezon City in 1975 as the daughter of 2 people from Albay, she grew up with no particular plan to become a beauty queen. But it seemed fate had bigger plans. Miriam studied physical therapy at the University of Santo Tomas, qualified as a licensed therapist in the state of Indiana, and was working as a gym instructor. Then in 1999, she got a call from Binibining Pilipinas, a call that would change her life forever. She wasn't even supposed to go to Miss Universe, but was called on because the original title holder lost her crown over a traveling passport issue. Miriam was sent to her place with barely enough time to train, flying to Trinidad and Tobago. She stumbled on the stairs in her evening gown during the pre-pageant, picked herself up in front of the entire world despite the embarrassment, and finished 1 place behind Miss Trinidad and Tobago. This was a huge moment because the Philippines had not come that close to the crown in at least 26 years. In one night, she had become a national icon. The future seemed bright with all the right opportunities and offers. But everything changed when she met Claudio Rondinelli. He was an Italian businessman and restaurateur living in Hong Kong. His massive fortune afforded him anything he wanted, and when he decided he wanted Miriam, he arranged for a flower shop in Makati to deliver 8 dozen pink-potted roses to her door every single day for 8 straight days. When the shop ran out of pink roses, he switched to tropical plants, and when the plants ran out, he sent red roses. He did not stop until Miriam's answer was yes. So not long after, they got married on January 5, 2004, in a beach ceremony in Boracay. For his sake, she left her career hosting contracts and entire life in Manila and moved to Hong Kong to live in a luxury mansion with a man she believed was her dream come true. But things went wrong almost immediately, and it would take several years to acknowledge the problem. She experienced verbal and emotional mistreatment and was legally unable to talk or leave for 3 years. She was bound by the legal restrictions of ongoing divorce proceedings in Hong Kong. Eventually, she was able to resume her career, going on business trips back to Manila a few times a year, and it was during one of those trips when her husband called and told her he wanted a divorce. In Miriam's words, she asked if there was someone else, and his straight answer was yes. The story goes that while she had given up everything to be in that house in Hong Kong, he made this decision over a phone call. Thanks to his influence, a Hong Kong court finally granted the divorce in 2006, and Miriam flew from the prison home to Manila with nothing from the marriage except huge amounts of debt. A tragic story, but least disturbing compared to what we're about to show you. Number 4. Dayanara Torres. Our next luxury home once belonged to the woman who returned to the Philippines as Miss Universe and lost everything. Dayanara Torres is a woman who saw the Philippines as her second home and gave everything to bring honor to it. She got married to one of the top-selling tropical salsa artists in town, yet her marriage story is a tale of tragedy mingled with luxury. Their home was in a luxury estate in Casa de Campo, Dominican Republic and Long Island, New York, each filled with cream-toned interiors, oversized entertainment spaces, recording studio influences, and glamorous Latin decor. On the surface, her luxury lifestyle showcased the immense highs of joyful wealth and freedom. Yet something different was happening behind the scenes. And to understand what it was, we'll have to go back to the very beginning. Dayanara Torres was born on October 28, 1974, in Toa Alta, Puerto Rico, as the youngest of 4 children in a modest family. Her father worked hard, and her mother kept the home together with whatever was left. No one would hear about her until she turned 17 and was spotted by a recruit at a local plaza. She quickly enrolled, and to everyone's surprise, won Miss Puerto Rico to the cheers of everyone. Just 1 year later, she would go on to stand on the Miss Universe stage in May 1993 in Mexico City at 18 years old and become the youngest winner in the pageant's history. She was supposed to fly back to Puerto Rico a year later, but instead went to Manila in 1994 to crown her successor and made the Philippines her second home for 5 years. She hosted ASAP, one of the most watched variety shows in the country, starred in more than 10 Filipino films, learned to speak Tagalog, and released a doll in her likeness that sold out in both Puerto Rico and Manila within days of hitting shelves. She founded the Dayanara Torres Foundation, funding scholarships for poor students in both her homeland and her adopted country. After some time, she decided it was time to return to Puerto Rico, and a few days later, she met a rich artist named Marc Anthony. They hit it off quickly and got married on May 9, 2000 in Las Vegas, Nevada. And that was where the problem began. In the summer of 2002, barely a year after they had their first child, the couple separated. Then less than a year later, in October 2003, they separated again, this time for good. Dayanara filed for divorce in January 2004 and finalized the process on June 1st of the same year. Barely a month later, Marc Anthony married Jennifer Lopez, and Dayanara went to court for child support and was awarded $13,400 a month. 10 years later, she went back to court seeking $123,000 a month because Anthony had spent only 35 days with their sons in 2012. The court found he had spent 71 days with them and settled on doubling the original amount to $26,800 a month. Over time, she rebuilt herself, trying out and succeeding at acting, hosting and writing a book. Then she fell in love again in 2017 and got engaged to the co-president of Marvel Studios in 2018. Then a few months later, she announced to the world that she had been diagnosed with stage 3 metastatic melanoma and called off the engagement later that year. Now brace yourself, dear viewer. What comes next is beyond intense. Number 3. Melanie Marquez. She was crowned Miss International in 1979 and spent the next 25 years trapped in a home and a marriage that left her deaf in one ear. For a quarter century, she was stuck in a ranch in Sevier County, a rural farming and ranching county in central Utah, about 4 hours south of Salt Lake City. But before we delve into more details, let's first explore the woman herself. Melanie Laurel Marquez was born on July 16, 1964, in the Philippines, and she was 15 years old when she won her first local beauty pageant. By 1970, she had won Miss International in Tokyo and quickly became one of the most celebrated Filipino beauty queens of her generation. At barely 17 years old and highly successful at modeling, she was seen as the girl who had everything, from the crown to the face, the career, and all the global magazine covers. Yet her early success didn't end there. She fully moved to New York 2 years later, was named the Face of the 80s in 1985, and competed at Mrs. World in India in 2005. She built a life out of beauty and ambition, and for a long time it held. And then, everything changed when she met and married Randy Adam Lawyer. He was an American businessman at the time, and they tied the knot on June 22, 2000. And she moved in almost immediately. As for the home back then, based on her description in later interviews, you drive for 20 minutes from the nearest town before the gate appears. Then you'll arrive at a cattle gate, the kind you unlatch yourself and close behind you. The house sits at the end of a dirt road surrounded by flat land and red rock formations that turn orange at sunset. Inside the house are wood-paneled walls, a kitchen built for function, not beauty, windows that frame nothing but open range in every direction. There are no visible neighbors and no sound except wind and livestock. The nearest shopping center is an hour's drive from home, and the nearest Filipino restaurant does not exist. Young Melanie moved into this strange and new world, had 2 sons with her husband, and then everything quickly started to fall apart. Many things went wrong from the get-go. For one, both her sons Abraham and Adam were diagnosed with autism, and her husband blamed and insulted her every day because of it. He used legal threats to make her show up in court for cases that had nothing to do with her. These were the emotional troubles she had to deal with, and soon enough, they would turn physical. On the night of March 1, 2022, Melanie was asleep beside her husband when she felt something strike the right side of her face. Based on her report, she thought she was dreaming at first until she found herself holding the medical certificate towards noon the next day. Her next birthday celebration after that incident ended with her getting placed in a mental facility for 10 days without knowing where she was until the second day. Her eardrum ruptured, yet she wouldn't reveal the permanent outcome until a television interview on January 5, 2026 at 61. Today, long after escaping the golden cage that kept her stuck for years, she is still partially deaf in that ear, and Randy's lawyers deny every word of it and call her accusations false. Number 2. Che Tiongson. She spent 17 years stuck in a mansion with one of the most powerful politicians in the Philippines. He was a man who kept caged tigers on his property, and whenever he felt offended by her, he would reach for the same tool he used to tame those animals. And for 17 years, Rachel Che Tiongson lived on the same property being treated as both. She was 18 years old and a student at the College of the Holy Spirit when she met Luis Chavit Singson, a former governor of Ilocos Sur, multiple-term politician, deputy national security advisor, and one of the wealthiest men in the Ilocos region. She hadn't enrolled in a pageant yet, was still a teenager, but was now with a man decades older, wealthier, and more powerful than anyone else she knew. Yet it didn't stop there. He was rich enough to pay $11 million just to bring the Miss Universe pageant to the Philippines later on in 2016. And as for Che, she won Miss Asia Pacific International in 1995, and by then she was already living inside Chavit's luxury world. The home was a golden tower, standing 9 stories high and designed to glow under intense sunlight like a trophy. The entrance posts alone cost 2 million pesos each, and their exteriors are inlaid with mother-of-pearl. Past the gates, the property opens into something between a palace and a safari, with domesticated deer moving freely across manicured grounds, exotic animals and enclosures that line the garden path, and the West Philippine Sea visible beyond the tree line. Inside the tower are decorations of marble and art, as well as a private cinema and massive rooms that put entire homes to shame. Despite these luxuries and being able to afford every material possession a young woman would want, she would describe life in that home as a prison. Many clues pointed to this, from the constant surveillance, jealousy so extreme that saying hello to a man she already knew was enough to cause an assault. Still, she had 5 children with him over 17 years. Then everything changed on the night of August 22, 2009. Horrific incident left her with injuries consistent with beatings. She immediately filed a VAUAP case. Then she withdrew it for the sake of their 5 children, as pursuing it allegedly meant being separated from them. The next day, she walked out of the courtroom and said she had forgiven him. But she was free. The tigers on his property lived behind bars, and for 17 years, so did she. Number 1. Margie Moran. At 19 years old, Margie Moran was crowned Miss Universe, loved and admired by everyone she knew, and by 21, she had been matchmade by Imelda Marcos and handed to one of the richest families in Mindanao, where she would spend the next 30 years caged in luxuries she despised. Her journey up to that point is complicated, fraught with many oddities. For one, she wasn't just a girl from nowhere. As we'll see, she came from one of the most prominent families in her country's world of politics. Maria Margarita Roxas Moran was born on September 15, 1953, in Manila. She was the granddaughter of Manuel Roxas, the 5th president of the Philippines. She studied business administration at Maryknoll College while modeling part-time for fashion designer Augie Cordero. In July 1973, when she was almost 20 years old, she flew to Athens and won Miss Universe, becoming the second Filipina to hold the title. Her life took an unexpected turn when Imelda Marcos, the First Lady of the Philippines at the time, threw a lavish reception party for Margie, far from home, in New York. Imelda looked across the room at Antonio Flo Urendo Sr., one of the wealthiest and most politically connected men in Mindanao. He was one of the wealthiest farmers in Mindanao, with annual harvests exported at values reaching $900 million. She turned to him and asked why he didn't invite his son. Tony Boy, as he was known, was studying in Boston at the time. He flew in the next day and they dated from that night forward. And in 1975, Margie Moran married Antonio Florendo Jr. Tony Boy's father had built the Tagum Agricultural Development Company into one of the world's highest-yielding plantations, supplying bananas and other fruits to Japan and the Middle East, and employing over 10,000 workers by 2012. With the money obtained from the business, he built Pearl Farm Beach Resort and the private island compound on Samal Island in Davao del Norte, which now belonged to Margie and her new husband. With her husband's hands full with other properties and businesses, Margie was left to run the entire island with all the resorts and factories therein. Though many people knew about it, getting to that location was no easy feat. The boat from the mainland takes 15 minutes, and when it docks, you step onto a private island where the sand is white and the water is the color of glass. The resort rises from the shoreline in layers and has everything from open-air pavilions, private villas built on stilts above the sea, a main lodge with high ceilings and Filipino hardwood, and the smell of salt and teak and money. Off the main island, connected by a short boat ride, sits Malipano, a smaller island where the Florendo family keeps their private villas, one per child, each decorated to personal taste. Margie's villa is also there, decorated with high-grade cathedral-grade ceilings with Filipino hardwood. For over 20 years, she managed Pearl Farm and lived on that island. She single-handedly promoted tourism in Davao, raised 2 daughters, Monica and Gabrielle, and built a life inside the world her husband's family had constructed long before she arrived. She eventually finished her business degree and earned a master's at the University of London. She also founded Ballet Philippines and advocated for peace in Mindanao during times of intense conflict. With so much to do, her children would later describe Margie as being always busy, especially with their father never being around. Despite all the properties on the island legally belonging to the entire family, her husband never called it home. Yet they never divorced, and she would later give a word of advice to young women across the country about the risks of marrying so young, saying, "When you marry young, you're not able to fulfill all the things you want to do." Those who viewed her saying this affirmed there was no hint of bitterness. In fact, her daughters said she loved her job on that island. The problem, though, was that she sometimes felt stuck there in ways that reportedly felt suffocating. Her own advice to young women, stated plainly in a Philippine Star interview, "Do not marry young." Her marriage seemed like a match made in heaven. Yet 30 years later, Moran felt trapped alone in a Manila condo that her husband had never once called home, and he still never does. Let's discuss in the comments down below. Which of these entries stood out the most to you? Is there anyone we've missed out? Would you trade your current situation for any of theirs? We'd love to hear what you think. Don't forget to also like, share, subscribe to Her Status, and check out other videos on the channel. Until next time, take care.